David, welcome to the Building Podcast. Today we are really privileged to have David Hughes, who's the Chief Executive of the Association of Colleges. Further Education Colleges, or FE colleges, are really the primary organisation that delivers the vast amount of skills onto our construction sites. And I'm really looking forward to today's discussion to find out how construction and our solar sector ought to be engaging with the colleges to make sure we get the skills and the people we need when we need them. David, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. Good to be here with you, and such an important topic. So thank you for the invite.
No, well, that's fine. David, we normally start off with allowing you in your own words to say who you are, what your organisation is, and really what your role is within the broader construction sector and how you support that. So
yeah, look, I've been at the Association of Colleges for over 8 years. Our job is we're a trade organisation, and we represent the interests of colleges. Lots of work in Whitehall with MPs and ministers and policymakers, and we support colleges. You know, colleges educate about 1.6 million people a year, turnover of about 7 billion, and they give us a little bit of money to do the work for them. And you know, the construction sector for us is a massive issue. I said at the party conferences I was at, the Labour Party conference, I did a round table on construction skills. And my opening remark there was that in the 30 years I've been working in this sector, every 5 years or so, I get a call from number 10 usually, or Treasury saying, what can we do about construction skills? There aren't enough construction workers. And we're in that position again, aren't we?
we are indeed, and I think it's. I know the changes that have happened within colleges to make them far more interested in talking to employers, and I'd quite like to explore that with you to understand how we should engage. So let's just you talk about the size of colleges, and so how many colleges are there nationally, and how many specifically cater for our industry? Do you think?
There's about 175 colleges that we call general FE colleges. So they're the ones who will be doing a whole range of skills, as well as some academic qualifications, teaching A levels, GCSE, maths and English resits, but all the trades, you know, construction, engineering, hairdressing, chefing, you know, hospitality, retail, all those things. So and that number has gone down significantly in the last 10 years with mergers, as well as shrinkage. You know, we've got less money, far less money now spent through colleges on skills than we had 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So does that mean that accessing colleges, we've now got to travel further as construction industry, or do you think there are just these centres are getting larger to cater for that?
No, I think we've lost some provision. So I think that local access is an issue. And also, we've had some colleges just pull out of what we call expensive subjects like construction.
Yeah.
And that's not meant to be pejorative, but it costs a lot, doesn't it? You need more space, you need kit, you need materials. And you need staff who know the business. All of those have become more difficult as the funding has got tighter. So we've got fewer places, and we've got fewer spaces within those places. So we know from work we did last year that colleges are starting to have waiting lists for construction training. And it's not for want of trying, but they don't have the money to put on the courses. And actually, they can't recruit the teachers to be able to teach because of pay in colleges is a long, long way behind where it was 15 years ago and where it should be.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some detail there I'd quite like to explore because I think there's ways the industry can help provide, with some of those challenges you've got. But so let's take a step back and how can the FE sector really help construction find the skills? Let's assume we haven't, we've got a reasonable college nearby that's providing those skills. How does that FE college really function to deliver the skills we've got to ensure those skills are actually what we need? Because I think there's a quite a concern that the training that we get from colleges is sometimes outdated and not responding to some of the current challenges we have within the sector.
Yeah, look, I mean, partnership is the right term to start with, isn't it? I think where I see it working, let's put it that way, is where the employers recognise they've got a role in helping the college to get it right. And the college recognises that without the employer's voice, expertise, understanding, and actually having the employer there to attract learners, actually it makes it much more difficult. So, we know that to bring young people through the system, employers need to get involved in schools to make the industry look more attractive. It's still over dominated by white men, and women are a minority, ethnic minorities are a minority. It's not viewed, the perception of the sector isn't viewed, I think, accurately. Actually, I think there's an old-fashioned view of construction. So I think that needs to work earlier than college. Actually, I think school engagement by employers, and then employers working with the college to offer work placements and to show why the industry is such an exciting place to be. I think with that outdated view of colleges, of construction, I think is a real problem. We know that young people are really interested in sustainability and climate change, and want to make a difference. Actually, construction, it should be and is at the cutting edge of that, but not many people know that. So how do we present the construction industry? I think is a really big partnership issue between colleges, construction employers, and schools. I think getting young people turned onto it is important, but also bringing adults back in, and that opportunity for adults to come and sort of try out new skills and to see how they get into the sector. Colleges can't do that on their own. They need the employer there offering real job opportunities, and being really clear about what the pay will be, what the terms and conditions will be like, and how secure that employment might be for the long term.
I mean, all those are really challenging for the industry, because of the boom to bust cycle that we're all exposed to, and certainly within the solar sector, which I know we've been working closely with some of your colleges. We have something called the solar coaster we've been through for the last few years, which is a really extreme boom to bust. I think one of the challenges we have in construction certainly is that the vast majority of our companies are SMEs and micros, and it's very difficult to have the resources to deal with sort of the challenges you've just laid to us, to get involved in schools and colleges to make a difference. And often we see colleges having really good access to their local network of schools to bring people through. Can we rely on that network and just really engage with the colleges to provide the information you need and the currency of what's currently going on?
Look, I absolutely understand. SMEs who are working on tight margins can't spend their lives walking around schools and talking to young people.
No.
But I think we need a little bit of that, and I think what I'd like to see more of is bringing together the employers, the SMEs in an area with the college. The college can do some of the convening and the pulling together, but really to, maybe putting on an open day a year for schools, so trying to make it as efficient and as possible, so that the SME employers are not having to give up loads and loads of time, but maybe putting in a little bit of time. And the quid pro quo is the support the college can give around recruitment. Recruiting is very expensive, time consuming, high risk. And I know a lot of colleges offer a recruitment service for employers in construction and other sectors. So I think there are some, kind of, we'll do this for you, and if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And I think that partnership is really critical. But the boom bust is tough, isn't it? And one of the things I suppose we all have to hope is that the new government are trying to set out a more secure, longer term, sort of stable future, and house building, retrofitting, net zero, green skills are massive parts of their agenda. So let's be a bit more optimistic about that and start planning for what could be a stable decade of growth in your sector.
Yes, I mean, just a couple of points there, David. I mean, the college I'm involved in, we held exactly that partnership day. We had a future careers in the construction event, and a whole load of employers turned up to that, and ended up with a sort of a little black book of people who are interested in coming and joining their specific companies, albeit in 1, 2, or 3 years' time. And I think that was a real boon to those that did involve themselves in that, because they then they were on people's horizon for employment, and I think that was a real benefit to both ways. And obviously colleges benefit from having people coming through and doing construction. In terms of the future of the workload, my personal view is that the next decade is going to be the decade of people who use their hands to work.
Mm.
You know, Chat GPT has yet to refurbish a house or install a boiler. But those of us that drive desks need to have an eye over our shoulder. And I think so. So I'm really interested in how what the college's role is in sort of trying to persuade employers that is changing. Because as you've rightly pointed out, the micros are busy putting the fires out on their platform, and they haven't really got time to get involved. And at the same time, the colleges desperately need to be training new skills in
Mm.
those manual skills, particularly the manual skills, you know, technical and communication skills, team building, all those soft skills that we find so important. How can we help the colleges deliver that sort of program?
Well, I think I mean, again, if I step back a little from that, and I'll come to the question more directly, I think there's a real challenge, isn't there? Because all the modern methods of construction look quite sexy, and offsite, and building panels and sort of bolting them together. In my language, I'm not an expert, but on site, all of that looks very exciting, and there's quite a lot of hype about it. But we still need, as you say, people who will be on site doing the manual trades. We
Hmm.
still need people who can service gas boilers, even though we absolutely need people who can install, heat pumps. So there's a real challenge, I think, between new skills and existing or old skills, and trying to get that balance right. And I think colleges need a bit of help with that, to try and work out how you get the balance right for young people coming through, because a lot of them might need to be trained in both. Um, how you attract adults back in who have the existing skills for the existing trades, but might need some of the new skills for the new trade. And then the third thing I think is really important is, and this feels to me something we've never addressed in the education world, and perhaps not in the employer construction world, is how do you give people a sort of a career pathway? Because it feels to me often we're saying to people, come and do a trade, and you can get a good career from a trade, but actually it's a dead end. You become a plumber. Well, how do you go from a plumber to a site supervisor into some of the professions? Is actually quite a difficult route.
Mm.
I'd like to see more thought on that, and more work to try and help people navigate their way through, because we all know being a plumber, up and it might be fine in the 20s and 30s. It gets more difficult in your 40s, and when your knees
Yeah,
go in your 50s, it's bloody hard, isn't it?
yeah.
So I think there is a sort of quite a lot of work to do around understanding where the industry is going, to help navigate for learners, but also for the skills. And we touched on earlier the need to be, up to date with the sorts of skills training, and I think colleges really struggle with that. That it does cost a lot to have the kit and the equipment, and we need sometimes a bit more help to get the investment right. So persuading government to invest, but also in what type of kit, what will be,
Hmm.
the real kit that's needed on site in the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, I think I saw a bricklaying machine for the first time about a year and a half ago, and I was just blown away by it. Doesn't mean, of course, we don't need brickies, because it can do
Yeah,
straight lines. It just can't do anything very complex. But
yeah.
there are things coming, aren't there, which we all need to be aware
Uh,
of.
I think there's a lot coming, and I think that you talk about bricklaying machines, and that's a challenge for colleges, isn't it? If you invest in today's bricklaying machine, in 2 years' time, it'll be completely redundant. It'll be out of date because there'll be new technology coming, and so it's finding employers who have the wherewithal to make those machines pay within the timescale, and working with those colleges,
Yeah,
with those employers to make it happen.
yeah,
Um, I think it's a really interesting point you raise around about career paths for those manual skills. Um, and certainly I think we get the industry we deserve in many respects, because we're not involved in working through how we can provide that progression. How adaptable are colleges? I understand the money situation, but how adaptable are colleges in their thinking to be able to provide sort of micro qualifications or courses that would allow that career progression going forward? You say you train as a plumber. We're going, particularly in the renewable sector, we're going to require different skills as the renewable sector gathers
mm,
pace.
mm,
And we see, we've got to train the people we've got rather than keep looking for new
yeah,
people.
yeah.
So how do we tackle that challenge?
Well, I think colleges are very adaptable and actually quite agile when they're allowed to be. and I do think we've got a big systems problem or policy problem or stuck thinking problem in Whitehall. So colleges are beset with rules about what the money they get can be used for. By and large, it can be used for big, fat, full qualifications and not much
Yeah.
else. I mean, apprenticeships are quite rigid. The standards take several years to change. I think we need to together be working on government to help them get more agile around those areas. So it's pretty clear, isn't it? The number of heat source pump engineers we need is far and above the number of young people who are going to be coming through the system to
Yeah.
train. We absolutely need some of the existing plumbers and electricians probably to retrain to be able to install and maintain them. So they're busy people. They're all often self-employed. What they need is quite flexible, accessible, short courses to be able to do that. And actually, it's going to be quite difficult to persuade them to pay for that. So we need some public investment in that.
Mm.
And it's those sorts of things we need to be sort of lobbying government for, because the government's net zero ambitions and the house building ambitions are way beyond the workforce we've got at the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
I think they understand that. I mean, I'm talking to Sarah Jones, who's the Minister for Industry, working across the Department for Business and Trade and Energy Security and Net Zero, two government departments. And she in a round table with construction employers and employer organisations, was really clear about that flexibility we need from public investment to be able to get those existing staff reskilled, some adults back into the sector who might have left because of the last downturn in the industry, but also to get the qualifications right, make them a bit more modular, so that as technology changes, as jobs change, people can come back and just do a top up rather than having to start from scratch. So I'm really keen that at a national level we're working together with the employer organisations, and we are, and government seems to be listening to kind of open up that flexibility so that when it comes to the SMEs at a micro level, they can walk into the college and say, look, we've got some people we need to get a module in, heat source retrofitting, whatever it might be. So that's a long answer to what's actually quite a simple question.
It's a long solution though, isn't it? It's a great many little things that's going to make a
Yeah,
difference.
but I am actually increasingly optimistic. I think there's a growing understanding across industry, government, colleges about what's needed, and I think the government we've got are much more interested in that partnership to get it right. I really am optimistic, and I've been doing this for sort of 30 years. I've seen a lot of failures.
One of the challenges I have in solar is trying to attract new trainers into colleges because the salary scales that we're allowed to use in FE are just nowhere near where the scales are outside in the industry because of such a shortage of people. And it's a sort of catch-22. The fewer colleges of training are going to attract people in to train people, the higher the salaries are outside, and the gap just keeps getting bigger. Are the mechanisms that you're aware of that the industry can support specifically those people in their particular sector? Because I know there's breaking those pay scales within the colleges is a real challenge.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're lobbying hard the government to increase pay in colleges. It's on average a college lecturer earns about 10,000 less than a school teacher. So we're talking 32,000 in a college, 42,000 in a school. A college lecturer in construction on 32,000 can probably earn double that.
Yeah.
They're training people who are 18, 19 will go out into industry and earn more than them from day one. I mean, so it's a major problem, and we need your help and your industry's help to keep pressing government on that, because it is a direct link to the overall funding that goes into colleges. So I think that's a big political thing, and we mustn't lose sight of that.
Yeah, I mean, David, I've been a governor off and on since 2015, and it's expecting a doubling of pay rates is just pie in the sky, I suspect. Do you think there are mechanisms that we can introduce or we ought to be lobbying for to allow specific industries to support or
Yeah.
find ways of funding those that
So,
their own provision?
so I think you absolutely right that none of us are expecting that pay gap to close in the next few months or even the next couple of years.
No.
It will take 5 years at least, but we need to put them on the right track to that. Some colleges will pay. Many colleges pay an uplift already for skills shortage areas like construction, and so they're not sitting there saying, well, we can't move. They are being as flexible as they can, but within an overall funding envelope that makes it very difficult. If you pay more for one, you get all sorts of industrial relations issues, but you
Yeah,
also
yeah.
just have less to spend elsewhere. So I think we need to be very specific about the lobbying. So Skills England is a new organisation that the government's setting up. It will be tasked with making sure that the skills are there for the 1.5 million new homes. The skills are there for the move to net zero. Both of those need massive boost in construction. One of the things we should be pushing for is the capital investment that's going to go in for those two targets will be immense from government as well as private investment. Can we capitalise some of the human costs in that, the human development costs? Can we get some funding through that sits outside of the borrowing, of government, because the revenue of government, because it's long-term investment? That I think would help. Can we raise the rates in those sectors that are a national priority to attract more learners in, but also to be able to pay people better? I think all of those are sort of medium-term ambitions. I think in the short term, I think there's also work that we do. So we are supporting people who, those plumbers with dodgy knees, in their 50s, might still have another 15 years or more if teaching, if they could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
given some of the skills. And so we've got programs on that, taking teaching further to be able to help them in. Now, the part of the problem is it's not massively attractive because the salaries aren't that great. But if we can get the salaries starting to improve, I think there's a lot of people who'd love to get back to the industry they've worked in. And it is so rewarding going in and helping young people and adults learn new skills, to get good jobs, to have good careers and to have good lives. So I think there is we've got some of that, and I think we can do more of that, and then the other thing I think we should look to more is employers working on a sessional basis teaching in colleges, so they don't necessarily need to become a teacher, but actually sharing their industry knowledge, sharing their skills in a controlled environment supported by teachers, I think could be really powerful. So can we be very flexible, bringing people in for half a day or a day a week, or even, a couple of days a month, to do some of the support that students will really love, because it's people who are in industry. They're doing it on site, they're doing it out there in the real world, and they can come in and say, this is how it works. So I think that partnership can work both ways, and then the colleges might be able to fund some of that, but perhaps not quite at the rate that the employer would like. So but it's a partnership approach that I think we
Yeah.
need.
I mean, I think one of my observations, David, would be that the lecturers that I speak to are absolutely passionate. And what I've seen over the last 10 years within the FE sector is we professionalised the continuing professionalisation of the sector. We have some very dedicated and highly competent professionals within the sector in terms of teaching, and there's a lot that they have to now cope with as part of that service. So we've got in maths and English, which continues to be a major challenge to them, that they have to include whatever they're teaching. They need to get maths and English sorted out. We've got a whole safeguarding thing which 15 years ago just didn't exist, but that now is a major plank of what they have to do. And it always amazes me how professional our lecturers and our teachers are, and yet we still go out into the industry, into construction, and we think that, well, they're just it's an easy job and they're sitting doing not very much at all. I think a little bit more profile of how professional the people we employ in colleges are would go a long way to demonstrating the value of what we're getting out of the colleges.
I think that's right. And I think if you look at the I mean, all of those issues. I'd add mental health and
Yeah.
as another one. I mean, what we saw in COVID in particular was a big increase in the number of young people with anxiety and stress related sort of mental health issues, which college staff are having to deal with that as well.
Mm.
And the professionalism that they portray in that is just fantastic, you know. So I think that's why I was saying there's a sort of a expecting a construction worker to walk into that and to be able to become that professional overnight is I think is a big ask.
Mm.
But there are ways you can bring in what they offer with that professionalism
Yeah.
to sort of create the space in which that can be really constructed. The maths and English, I think, is another issue might be worth us dwelling on for a second, if I may.
Yes.
So we know that large numbers of young people don't get their maths and English GCSE grade 4 at age 16. Overall, it's about a third of the cohort. It's a shocking indictment, I think, of the education system that figure hasn't changed for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
It won't change unless we do something different. There is a what's called the Curriculum and Assessment Review that's just started. Good news, a bunch of people coming together under the support of the Education Secretary to look at those issues. And one of the first questions they've asked is, what do we do about that maths and English problem? Yeah. And I probably don't want to go into the detail of it now, but it's a real opportunity for us to sort of think about what are the real maths and English or the literacy and numeracy requirements in the construction sector. How do you contextualize it? You know, knowing how many bricks a wall needs is actually quite an important numeracy task. But you don't learn that in GCSE maths. You know, communicating with the client is a really important need, but you don't learn that in English GCSE. So, is there a way of having a qualification that's a bit more contextualized to the construction industry? I think there is. And I think it'd be really exciting if the government lets us try and explore that a bit more.
I think that's really good news, David. I mean, it won't just apply to the construction industry. It'll apply to every one of those apprenticeships that we're running. And it always strikes me that traditional educational systems failed in 11 years to teach maths and English, and we get 3 years to try and put it right. Just seems grossly unfair, particularly when we're not paid the money to do it in the first place. So.
And my experience, Mark, is that when you talk to young people in the year or two in the run up to their GCSEs, and the ones who are disaffected about English and maths, and a lot of them can't see the point, it's not relevant, don't need it. I've heard lots of times that group saying, well, I don't need it, I'm going to be a hairdresser. I don't need it, I'm going to be a brickie. I don't need it, I'm going to be a plasterer. And it's so sad because actually they've got ambition and they've got a kind of a real view of what they want to do in life, but they don't understand the relevance of trigonometry and poetry, you know. So if we could capture that enthusiasm for a career and give them some maths and English that's relevant to it, I think they'd flourish, you know.
I'm always impressed with our students at college. Yeah, they are, the enthusiasm and their dedication always impresses me, and that's testament, I think, to the professionals of the staff, but also the opportunities that are out there to get involved and do things. I'm mindful of time. We've been talking nearly for nearly 40 minutes. I was sort of come back to perhaps what the message might be for construction industries and solar sector to try and get the best out of colleges. And we've talked around about getting engaged, and how should people get engaged with colleges? What's the best avenue to follow?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two types of engagement. There's the national stuff, and a lot of SMEs won't have the time or resource to do that. But we need their representative bodies and their trade bodies to do that, and I think they are doing that. And
well, that's what the National Federation of Builders would be here to do, and so that's our green light to come and get involved with you. But the individual,
but I mean, I do think that's really critical, you know, and making sure the SMEs understand why that's important in terms of getting the rules and the system right, you know. So that's one level. At local level, I think there are lots and lots of employers who are engaged with their colleges. I think if you're not, my advice is talk to some of your colleagues in other construction organisations and employers and see see how they are and get their view of it and find out why they're doing it, perhaps. Because I think where they are engaged, they get a lot out of it, personally, but also professionally, and also on the bottom line. They'll get better staff and better skills and so on. So, don't just walk into the college blind. I think talk to some of the people in the industry and find out how they're doing it and what works, and then go in and don't make demands, but have that open conversation. Tell them what your challenges are, see whether they can help, ask them what their challenges are. Because partnership is two-way, isn't it? It's win-win. And whilst the college can offer a lot, it also needs a lot. And that sense of shared mission. You're struggling to get some young people to come into your industry. We can help. We've got loads of young people, but we can also, you can help us get more young people into the industry, and maybe you can help us with a little bit of, talking about what the industry's like, maybe a bit of work experience, maybe helping us get our teaching materials right, so the curriculum right, or you've got some kit in your organisation we can't afford. Could we come and use it every now and then? So I think if people go into those discussions understanding the two-way win-win nature of it, and being really clear about what you want from it, I think that really, really helped. And don't give in if it doesn't work first time. I think one of my criticisms of the colleges I represent, it's sometimes hard to find the right person to talk to from the outset.
Yeah.
So please don't give in, but which is why you might want to talk to some other people in the industry to find out who's the person to talk to, I think is a really critical question.
Yeah, I think the other challenge we have is that there's a siege mentality in some colleges because money has been so tight for so long that it generally feels a little bit, well, you've got to pay, we can't provide very much, but we need a lot of help from you, and that's a challenge I think we have to just try and see past and see where we're going. David, it'd be remiss not to just have 2 minutes on T levels, because I know it's something that colleges are grappling with and still grapple with up and down the country, and the employers are probably some bit ambivalent about. What do you think the future is for T levels, and certainly in construction?
Well, I think I've got a roundtable with Jackie Smith, who's the minister, next Tuesday on.
Oh, well, you'll know after that then.
so yeah, ask me next week. I think that the T-level in built environment's an important qualification, and I think we should get behind it. I think it's probably right for the people who want to get into the professions, kind of the quantity surveyors, the architects, the people who are going to go into that side of the construction industry. It's not the right qualification, we think, for plumbers and electricians and trades. And I think we've got new ministers who recognise that now. So the trade qualifications need to be separate and distinct and funded and supported. But we still, I think, need to think about, the sorts of students who do believe in, the construction industry and green skills and tackling climate change and trying to get construction to net zero, who want to go into those professions, because the T-level can be a really powerful way for them to do that rather than A-levels, So I think there's room for both. And I'm going to be optimistic because it's Friday. I'm end the week on a high. I am optimistic that the government's understood the distinction there and will fairly soon come out and make that clear. We can't lose the trade qualifications, because I think that would be a disastrous backward step.
No, and absolutely. I think it's getting that message back out to members of National Federation of Builders and other organisations that to actually understand that and understand how those qualifications are developing. I know we've got many members involved in trailblazer groups for apprenticeships. I know there's a great deal of frustration how long that process takes, and also we've been pushing T levels for some time, but we still have the problems. If we've got great to hear we've got a government that might actually start looking at how we can morph them into something that's more appropriate for the sector. David, I'm going to last question then is really, what would, if you had sort of 2 or 3 wishes for employers within the construction industry, how would you sum up the conversation we just had as what they ought to be doing to support their skills? And we're in the middle of a skills crisis. We've got a whole load of skills providers around the country, all the all those ones you've talked about, how should we be engaging with you to make sure we solve this skills crisis for our individual businesses? What's really the top three tips?
Well, I mean, look, SMEs need to support you, Mark, and organisations like yours to lobby
Yeah,
nationally, and to come together. I think, and then I think for you and the other kind of employer organisations in construction, there seem to be quite a few. Would be my observation. Working together on a single script would be really helpful, because I think
yeah,
we've got a government that's listening. So that's number one. Number two is, I think a bit long term about the skills you need. We need. I think colleges need SMEs who can think 1, 2, 3 years. I know how difficult that is, so I'm
yeah,
not delusional, but the pipeline of young people coming through can be affected by interaction early on.
yeah,
Don't expect things to happen overnight. They can't. To get someone trained in the trades will take 2 or 3 years post 16. So they need to be starting to work with colleges now for what might happen in 1, 2, 3 years, not 1, 2, 3 weeks. So I think the time scale is really important. And then third, I think we were saying it towards the end anyway. It is about what is it, what are your priorities? Be really clear about them. What are your needs? What are your challenges? But also try to understand what the challenges and needs and aspirations are of the college as well. Because if you can do both of those things, articulate what you need and when and why, but also understand the other side and the constraints they're under, then you can start to have a really productive conversation.
mm,
So sometimes I know employers get very frustrated with colleges because they say, well, I just need someone trained in a module. And the college said, well, I can't do that because
yeah,
it's not fundable and it's not eligible. So understanding those constraints, I think, is really, really critical. And my experience is, where you have that constructive dialogue, colleges can be and are very agile and very flexible,
yeah.
even though the constraints are there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's the case. I mean, we have today Malton College has been presented to the United Nations as a swap, a sector-based work academy program for bringing unemployed people into the solar sector,
Mm,
and it demonstrates to me the power of what we've got is of worldwide class,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the opportunity that employs to young people and unemployed people as well as the colleges and the sector is there. We just need to make it happen
yeah.
effectively. David, thank you very much. It's been a fascinating tour, and I know I certainly could have spoken, listened for a lot longer, and sort of challenged you on all sorts of range. But I think we've had a good skate over some of the detail, and I think the message are to get involved with the colleges, be master of your own destiny to bring what the people you need through, and certainly for trade federations like my own, to get involved early with you to provide a joint endeavour is a very clear and unambiguous message. Thank you very much for your time today, and wish you every success in the role within the colleges. Are clearly a very important function to make happen.
Thanks, Mark, and it's been great talking with you.